All right, good morning. Welcome back here to Trader Minute. Great to have you aboard. Market set to open up a little bit higher here. If you're talking about the Nasdaq, you're talking about a sizable gap up of about a dollar. If you're talking about the S&P, you know what? We're probably not set to gap up anymore. Yeah, it's pretty much set to open flat now. If you talk about small caps, they're set to open up flat to just barely in the red here this morning. And what's going on? Well, we had the Fed yesterday, right? And the market rallied. Held most of that rally. Did sell off, about 15 points into the close, but overall held the majority of the rally. And then after the bell, we saw earnings, and we saw earnings from the likes of Facebook, Microsoft, who you can see is trading lower here this morning. Earnings from the likes of Visa, who you can see is also trading lower here this morning. And then we had earnings from Facebook, who you can see is not trading lower this morning, who is actually trading 10% higher this morning. Now, yesterday, it talked about a lot of companies that have reported earnings and talked about how the Apples and AMDs of the world, Triple M's of the world, they had been reporting earnings, but their fundamentals have been falling, right? And yeah, fine, they rally on their earnings, great, but the overall fundamentals are on a decline. That's not the case with all stocks out there. Alibaba, IBM, Boeing, some big examples of stocks whose fundamentals are improving despite the earnings, right? Or with the earnings. But when it comes to Facebook, and this gap, it's pretty large. I mean, even for Facebook, that's a pretty big gap. We have seen Facebook have some big gaps before, but this one's very sizable. This is on some improving fundamentals and some record earnings. And let's see if I can show it to you visually here. When it comes to Facebook, here we go. Here's their earnings, 238, all-time high. They were expected at 217, came in at 238. So all-time high there on earnings, and then on revenue, all-time high. And, guiding going forward, positive. And if you think about everything that's been going on with Facebook and all the headwinds for Facebook, it only makes this even a better beat, and really going to clobber the shorts here, in a big way here today. And it's one that it is one that when you look at the numbers, you look at the metrics, you look at what's happening. There's some serious fundamental improvement here. We have not seen a company come out with earnings here this earnings season yet where every analyst has to jump on it and change their rating or adjust their rating. And normally during an earnings season, we get a company like that almost every day where the analysts have to jump all over it. We haven't had one of those so far this earnings season, where the analysts have just, had to come out, had to jump all over it the next day. And, here you can see with Facebook, and I'm just going to pull over some of the analyst commentary. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, 17 analyst upgrades here this morning. That is just an absolute monster number. And if you look at something like Morgan Stanley, Facebook story's starting to get good. I'm going to go back. I want to see their entire commentary on it. But, it is one where it's not the type of story you look at and go, wow, this is as good as it's ever going to get. It's the type of story that goes, wow, has this only just begun? And I think that's what we're looking at here with Facebook this morning. It's going to gap up to its 200-day moving average. Going to gap up to kind of where it was in July and August. It's going to be a tough chase here this morning. But long term, I think Facebook has changed its stripes here in a big way with this earnings number. And I think it is something that has to be recognized. And when you look at stocks with the potential of monster moves over the course of this year, I think you have to put IBM in that category. I think you have to put Boeing in that category. And I think maybe Facebook might be the best of the best in that category there. And so, Facebook, very, very solid numbers, very nice numbers. Now, is it enough to carry the entire market? It looked like it when S&P futures were trading yesterday because we saw Microsoft gapping lower or turning lower after their earnings, but Facebook, definitely carried it. If you go and you want to compare Microsoft, just the raw numbers, let me show them to you here. Here's their earnings number, which is pretty much in line with Wall Street. Just slight beat, and then the revenue number, just slight beat, but also all-time high in revenue here for Microsoft. I mean, they are clicking on all cylinders. It could be one of those where you could argue that Microsoft has a better a better buy opportunity today than a Facebook, just simply because of the shares dipping. The overall earnings were good, but it's still one where there's some cash flow concerns. There's some concerns about losing a little bit of margin within the cloud space. So has a few smaller concerns, but it may be one of those where buying the dip on Microsoft overall may be a pretty solid setup here. Now we also saw Visa's numbers. We see Visa down here after the numbers. It initially gapped up, and you can see the earnings. They beat expectations. All-time highs in earnings, revenues beat expectations. All-time highs in revenue, and that is just what Visa does. It does it quarter after quarter, year after year, and just continues to be an absolute monster in terms of earnings. Now, is this a story where a lot of it's already priced in? I think you can make that argument, but overall, I think Visa's still one to look at very bullishly as we go forward throughout the rest of this year. Now, we have a lot of earnings here this morning. U.S. Steel, many others, that reported, last night and this morning. General Electric, UPS. So this morning I'll be going through quite a few of those. Here. I still need to go through Tesla. I didn't go through Tesla very much. I just watched some of the price action and the initial numbers. You can see it trading down to about 300, which for Tesla, not that big of a move here overall for the company. But again, a lot of earnings. Kind of driving things. Yesterday, we saw the market get everything they wanted from the Fed, and so it basically, you had a Fed that sounded pretty darn dovish, and you had a market that reacted pretty darn dovishly, and that was the overall reaction. A dovish Fed is not that great for banks. It's not that great for it's not that great for industrials. It's really good for tech. It's really good for materials. Really good for energy and gold, and we might see that is the overall cycle as we go forward here in the markets. All right. So anyway, that's some of the stuff going on this morning. We did have some Chinese data last night. Let's see if I can pull it up here. We had the manufacturing PMI here out of China, and let's see here if it'll pull that up here for me. But KC came in at 49.5, which is contraction. Slightly higher than expected, though. was not a big mover. We didn't see, a big move in overseas stocks when that number came out. We will get another piece of Chinese manufacturing data here tomorrow. Today is the last day of January, and so we will see, we see a bunch of data. None of it's really all that critical, all that vital. Last day of the month tends to be a sell day, especially on months where the market's higher. So we'll see how that transpires here today. And then tomorrow, a whole slew of economic data set to be released. So a very big week for the markets in terms of data and information, and one where I think there's going to be some very key takeaways from the weekly charts that we see set up, and we'll talk about those as the week winds. For the challenge, I still have XLF. It sold off into the close, and we basically saw, we talked about it. Even when XLF was at its highs, it was lagging the rest of the market. XLF is set to gap down about 10 cents here this morning. Be really nice to see it sitting down around 25.50, 25.25 here by the end of the day. I think the odds of that are fairly remote, but barring some sort of catalyst. But we will have some sort of catalyst here tomorrow there for it as well. So most likely we'll just be holding on to that here today, and and going from there. Thanks for hopping on. Have yourselves a great one, and we'll talk to you later. Take care.